God put you as an English major at Yale, and then he gave you pretty much the dream of a lifetime, and at that point he's saying to you, you know, if you can't take a joke, Eric, to hell with you. I'm giving you the answer, you know, and at some point you got to jump on the boat, right? And Martin Luther, you know, there are real parallels, wild and crazy times to now. And you put Bonhoeffer together with that. So you're on a really good launching pad. All right, that's a lead into a question that I didn't ask you, but one of the unique abilities you have, and I wish more church people did this. Some ministers can. Not many conservatives are real good at it, like Reagan. But you use laughter and comedy, and I know you did that at Yale, as a skill set to further the Lord. Well, what can you say about that?
Anything that's good and beautiful and true, humor is a gift from God. And you know, since I was a kid, I have been surrounded by people cracking jokes. I talk about it in my autobiography, Fish Out of Water. My mother's side of the family, the German side of the family, were hilarious. My grandmother was one of the funniest people I ever knew. She was like a comedian. And I grew up with the language of humor, cracking jokes are constant. Not knowing that wasn't normal. That was my family. When I went to Yale, I was the editor of the humor magazine at Yale. After I graduated Yale, while I was staggering, trying to find my métier and the meaning of life, I published humor pieces in the New York Times Magazine, in the Atlantic Monthly, you know, following in the footsteps of, you know, S.J. Perlman and Woody Allen and Garrison Keillor. I wrote these humor pieces. So humor was, I wanted to be a writer for Letterman, for Seinfeld. This has just been something that I have, it's just who
you could have ended up Second City if you hadn't had the dream.
Well, I love all that stuff, and it's kind of wild to think the path that God took me on. But humor to me was always just a way of communicating, and it's very natural for me. It's not like I'm planning it. It's just kind of who I am. But I think it's important because I think it disarms people. There's something important about humor. Humor has always been directly related to truth-telling. You know, whether you think about the court jester speaking to the king and telling the uncomfortable truths to the king. And so I feel that it's just a big part of who I am, and it's a big part of my life. Now, if you read my biographies, except for the Luther biography, there's not much humor, you know, in the story of Bonhoeffer. There are sly jokes if you read it very carefully, and in the Wilberforce book. The Luther, there's a lot of humor in there. Again, if you have to be a careful reader, but
well, he had a strange sense of humor.
Oh, he had a wild sense of humor. No, he had a wild sense of humor.
I meant that in a good way.
But yeah, but so humor is just hugely important to me. And Socrates in the City is a place where I have allowed myself to be silly and stupid in a hopefully humorous vein. But it's just a big part of who I am on my radio show. I think humor, at least for me, it's important. And the tagline for our company, Metaxas Media, is truth, humor, hope. So, you know, Metaxas Media is this company that we're, you know, launching all these media projects. But I feel like, you know, there's a time to be serious, and there's a time for kidding around, and this is not one of them. That's also a joke. It's hard to follow. Yeah, there's a time for kidding around and a time to be serious. This is not one of them. But the point is that clearly there are times when I'm, you know, in writing these books, Letter to the American Church and Religious Christianity, hyper serious. No. But there are plenty of places where it's a delight to be goofy and to be humorous.